What's up, YouTube? Today we are checking out a video claiming to prove Islam in 10 minutes. So, really interesting topic here. I'll start the video at about the 3 minute and 30-second mark because the first 3.5 minutes is just him explaining theism, or why someone should be a theist. I'm already a theist, and not to mention his arguments were a bit lackluster anyways. But if you like the video, hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's check it out.
But what is Islam? Islam means submission, and a Muslim is one who submits his will to the Creator. The Creator sent many prophets, Moses, Jesus, Noah, peace be upon them all, for a message to the people. The same message, to worship the Creator alone without partners. But man is flawed, and people, kings, ignorant, the evil, the greedy, the disobedient, the arrogant, intentionally and accidentally distorted and kept changing the message they came with. So the Creator sent a final prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to keep mankind back on the straight path and be a guidance for the rest of time until the end of times.
No, that's Joseph Smith. He's the final prophet who the angel Gabriel came to him and gave him a special message from God himself that he wrote down in a book in order to guide people back to the true church of God. That's what Joseph Smith did. He's the final prophet that corrected everyone else's wrong ideas about God, not Muhammad. Just want to point that out there. What's the problem? They're the exact same story. Angel Gabriel pulls up on Muhammad. Angel Gabriel pulls up on Joseph Smith. And look what we got here. We got a new revelation, a new prophet to bring everyone back to God. Woohoo! Or maybe neither one of them are real prophets at all. I don't know. That's another option. But let's keep it going.
But what is the point of a prophet? Well, without them, we don't know about the Creator and what is right and wrong. They are the examples and the role models for mankind to follow. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, came with the Quran, a claim that it is the Creator's speech. It is the Creator directly speaking to mankind and to the reader. Well, how can we prove the Quran is from the Creator? Well, we can study it. It was sent to the greatest poets in Arabia, and they could not match it. And they accepted it could not have been from a human. They came up with all sorts of excuses. It was magic, sorcery, but they did not think a human could have possibly made it. It also has a challenge inside of it that no one can produce a verse like it, and it is a linguistic masterpiece. This is attested to generally by all scholars, Muslims and non-Muslims.
No, it's not. It is not attested to by virtually all scholars that this is a linguistic masterpiece. I would just encourage anyone to read the Quran. It's a tough read. I'm not going to lie. It is a tough read. So I just want to pull up a few scholars just off of a general search that disagree with the idea that the Quran is some linguistic masterpiece. Okay. There's been different things that they've noted over time. Theodore, he points out some grammatical irregularities, some stylistic shifts, kind of suggesting that this Quran is not uniform in literary excellence. You get Arthur Jeffrey, he's this Australian scholar of Islamic studies. He points out some non-Arabic words, which is really interesting. You got a German scholar. He proposed that parts of the Quran stem from pre-Islamic Christian hymns, which if you do any study of the Quran, there's a lot of pre-Islamic text and references to pre-Islamic text in there, particularly Christian-esque text, not really Christian text, but like the Gnostic Gospels and things like that. And then, there's a few others, and I just grabbed a list of 5 off the top because there are plenty of scholars that recognize that there's a lot of issues with the Quran. We'll continue on.
Agreeing that the Quran is a literary marvel and in a league of its own. The book also has no contradictions and no mistakes. It has also been unchanged since it was revealed. We have manuscripts to prove this, that not even a single letter is different. Yet,
once again, that is just simply not true. So here we have 2 different versions of the Quran. It's chapter 37, verse 12. In the first version, it translates, "But you wonder while they mock," referring to Muhammad. In the next translation, it says, "But I wonder while they mock," referring to Allah. And what you'll often hear is this defense that it's different dialects and different recitations. Here's the problem in that is that this is not a dialect issue. This is not a grammar issue. This either it is Muhammad or it is Allah, and it completely changes the meaning of the text. Right? And so therefore, the question is it Muhammad that wonders or is it Allah that wonders? And it is a contradiction. Plain and simple. And when you claim that it's perfectly preserved, you really only need to show one instance of a textual variation to show that it is not perfectly preserved, because no ancient documents, including the Quran, are perfectly preserved. And there are Muslims who are willing to recognize this, but it seems like the mainstream argument is still that the Quran is perfectly preserved, one of which he will continue to present here. So we'll go back to it.
All of this somehow came from someone who was illiterate. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, could not read or write, he never went to school, and he had no education. It is still unexplained to this day how he came with the Quran. We also have an oral tradition to prove that the Quran is preserved by a chain of narration that goes all the way back to the Prophet, the source. Basically, millions of people have this book memorized by heart and they can recite it. If I read it perfectly, and my teacher gives me the seal of approval, and he got the seal of approval from his teacher that he did it perfectly, and his teacher from his teacher, and his teacher from his teacher and his teacher, you go all the way back to the Prophet, the source, with no discrepancies, we can confirm the Quran is preserved. This is a unique claim that Islam has that no other religion does, as no other religion can prove their claims go all the way back to their source. The Quran also had things in there that were not known to anybody at the time.
Before we jump into this last section, one of the other things that he claimed was that it has no mistakes, and once again, that is simply just not true. So I want to take a look at one. So this is the most fascinating one to me because there's this random story that is thrown into the Quran that's actually taken from these weird Christian Alexander the Great kind of romance stories that happened, several hundred years, not only after Christ, but after Alexander the Great, who's before the birth of Christ, right? He's a Greek, and he's a Greek pagan polytheistic emperor that the Quran simply does not recognize and understand. And so there are Muslim scholars who will recognize, you kind of see at the very top that word Dhul Qarnayn. That's the two-horned one. It's referring to Alexander the Great because that was kind of like a nickname for him because he's depicted as wearing these two horns on the side of his head. And so there's this story about him finding the sun setting in a spring of murky water, which doesn't make any sense because the sun doesn't set in water, just a heads up. But they're actually stealing that story from the story to the left. And so you can go and read the whole thing. I just took a couple excerpts from it because one part of it that I find really fascinating is this explanation of Gog and Magog, which is a biblical reference to Revelation. This is a weird Christian text. And it's this idea you can kind of read right in the middle. It says, "They shall rise up and go forth and fill the earth with assemblies and with war and captivity and strife and blood and great slaughter," and it continues on, right? And if you look on the other side, kind of in the middle, I have underlined, it says, "They pleaded, O Dhul Qarnayn, surely Gog and Magog are spreading corruption through the land," which is exactly what we read in the other one. "Should we pay tribute to provide you to build a wall between us and them?" He responded, and this is what's really interesting because Alexander the Great is not a monotheist, right? He's a pagan, but he's depicted here. It's saying, "What my Lord has provided for me is far better, but assist me with resources." And then the next line, "And I will build a barrier between you and them. Bring me blocks of iron." Well, why is that significant? Because that's what happens in this story. Alexander builds a gate of brass and iron. Because this story from the Quran is taken from this Christian made-up romance story about Alexander the Great doing these weird quests, like going to the ends of the earth and fighting off Gog and Magog in building a gate of iron. It is a absolute historical blunder because none of this ever happened. Let's continue on. Back it up a little bit.
Not known to anybody at the time, let alone an illiterate man in the deserts of Arabia almost 1,500 years ago in the 7th century. For example, the Big Bang was discovered in the 19th century. It was discovered that the universe was once a tiny, dense mass that exploded. Yet the Quran over 1,000 years before this said,
أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ.
the universe...
Such a stretch to call that the Big Bang. Not buying it for 1 second. Say that verse is referring to the Big Bang. It's way too vague. Not a chance.
Expanding also was not discovered until the 19th century, that theorized the universe is a finite mass that is expanding. Yet the Quran says over 1,000 years before this,
وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ.
people used to believe the earth...
Okay, other ancient texts talk about the earth expanding, including the Bible. So I don't have any good reason to believe that that's true. Okay, Isaiah 40:22 talks about the heavens being an expanse. Job 9:8 talks about the Lord alone stretching out the heavens. You have some Greek philosophy, Heraclitus, Anaximander. Okay, the Stoics, they all had their own view about the universe expanding, and so it's just not enough to say that the Quran is really making some scientific miracle claim here.
People used to believe the earth was stationary and the sun orbited the earth. It was not until 1543 when Copernicus discovered that the earth also has an orbit and is not stationary. And once again, the Quran, almost 1,000 years before this, correctly says,
وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ
I'm blocking a little bit. It says all heavenly bodies in an orbit are swimming.
وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ.
So once again, this is just simply not true. There is an ancient Greek astronomer and mathematician. His name is Aristarchus. So he's about 300 years before Christ, and he suggested a heliocentric model of the solar system that we all orbited the sun. This was, 800 years, whatever, before Islam ever, came about or existed. So human beings were presenting this model way before Islam. Just want to point that out.
it is also known by scientists that iron comes from space with the explosion of a star. Then iron fragments are blasted into space, and that is how iron came to Earth millions of years ago. The Quran also indicates this when the Creator, Allah, says,
وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ.
as the Creator here says, we sent down iron, indicating that it was sent from space, or sent from somewhere not occurring naturally in Earth. The Creator also says, messenger...
That phrase is also used to say, we sent down cows. So maybe they came from space too. I don't know.
was sent with the scripture so people may maintain their affairs in justice. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, also told us about moral lessons. He spoke about spreading peace to your neighbors, giving charity, feeding the poor, taking care of the elderly and the young, stopping oppression, being compassionate, doing things with excellence, not harming anybody, and struggling against our desires. He also combated racism, saying there is no difference from an Arab or a non-Arab, a black or a white, except in piety and good deeds. The Prophet also came with many prophecies of the future, and signs.
Well, before we get into these prophecies of the future, Muhammad's character is definitely one to be called into question. There's the supposed Satan verses where he promoted polytheism. And then we don't even want to get into one, polygamy, and two, child marriage, and his marrying a 6-year-old and consummating that marriage at the age of 9, which is just absolutely disgusting. And so there's definitely some moral concerns there with the supposed prophet Muhammad. But let's see what he predicted in the future.
Signs of the end times. He said barefoot Bedouin Arabs will compete in building the tallest buildings. They had no money in Arabia at the time. They were desert dwellers. This was a prediction that didn't make too much sense. He could have said the Romans, as the Roman Empire was the largest at the time. Even all the way up until now, they didn't make and compete in making tall buildings. Until about 50 years ago. Still, it was nothing but barren, dry desert. But the Prophet also said the earth will puke its treasures. And then oil came about. The Bedouin barefoot Arabs became rich and they were able to build and compete in building the tallest buildings. There are hundreds of prophecies. You can read this book if you want to know more about what the Prophet prophesied almost 1,500 years ago that came true. Just as a cherry on top as well, he said, I was born on a Monday, I was given revelation on a Monday, and I will die on a Monday. And you know what day he died on? You can look this up for yourself.
Okay, well, those are just, I don't know, they're just so extremely vague. They're just these vague phrases, and to try to, like, I don't know, tie that into this fulfilled prophecy, 1,500 years later, it's just not that easy to buy. It really isn't. And so I don't think that this video proves Islam. I think it actually creates some space to push back on some of their positive claims and show why some of the things that are being stated about Islam is false. So, but if you're a Muslim, you see this video, you disagree, you think I got something wrong, just let me know. I'm down for a convo. I ain't like, if you're right, let's hear why. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed the content. Man, y'all take it easy. I'll catch you next time. Peace.